views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. This Thursday is the primary for 3 races for office in the Bronx. There's a highly contentious race for the seat in the 34th Senatorial District between Jeff Klein and Alessandra Biaggi. 3 candidates are head-to-head in the race for the 87th Assembly District. They are Farah Despains, John Perez, and Carinas Reyes. And incumbent Carmen Arroyo and challenger Amanda Septimo are competing in the 84th Assembly District. All 3 races have garnered significant attention, but what about grassroots organizing outside of those races? There's a whole slew of coalition building in the Bronx right now that doesn't get quite as much attention as those campaigns. And in this day and age, with such fractured politics throughout America, we thought it would be good to check in with a couple of those grassroots people, see what they're about, examine their agendas, and find out how their activities can bring more people out to vote on Thursday, and also energize the dialogue about important issues in the borough of the Bronx. So please join me in welcoming a former candidate for city council in the East Bronx who is running unopposed for re-election as district leader in the 82nd Assembly District. Hi to Marjorie Velasquez. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, Gary.
And also a co-coordinator of Bronx Progressives, which is a chapter of the New York Progressive Action Network. It is Samelys Lopez. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Ms. Velasquez, let's start with you. So we're going to rewind history. You ran for office. You were not successful, but then you have not stopped being active. Talk to me about your motivation for why you didn't say, all right, I lost, I'm quitting, I'm leaving, and why you're staying involved and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Because I can't stop. I persist. That's part of who I am and my spirit. And also as a woman, you know what? It's in us, you know? For me, I knew the odds going into it. That's one thing. And I've also known many women who, they don't win on their first try. They win on their second, sometimes on their third. People like Councilwoman Margaret Chin, people like Councilwoman Elizabeth Crowley. You know, I've seen them, I've learned a lot from them, and it's sure like the motivation to know that at the end of the day, it's not even about me though. It's about my community. And we stand to lose so much if I'm not there for them, if I'm not active. And you know what? Nothing's gonna stop me.
You believe that about yourself. You're saying there's so much in my community that won't happen if you individually are not there.
Not just me, it's just I've got this right now. I know how many people did vote for me. There is a momentum. There are people who do respond to me, and there's still, look, I'm really active in my community board. I'm the treasurer. I got reelected this year again, thankfully. Well, you know, look, it shows me that people still want me around and they want me to help them out. And then certainly like having the opportunity to speak to first-time candidates, letting them know what's at stake, you know.
And what it's like, I
And what it's like, you know, and certain things, you know, it's a lot of like a head game, right? It's a very psychological in the way where you're trying to outthink your opponent and trying to make sure that you know where you're at with your followers, you know, like it's social media here, it's, you know, community events, and try to build and keep up that momentum, but it's also guiding the candidates, right, and making sure that they're healthy.
We should mention, I don't mean to be, evasive, but you ran against Mark Jonai, who eventually became the city council member. And resources was another thing. Obviously, he had been in office before, and he had campaign operations in place and all that kind of thing. What are the issues that And you hang in there. You're getting the same stuff in a minute.
The same treatment.
What are the issues that make you say, you know what, this is something I can address? And then for both of you, and this is why deliberately we selected you to be here, I do want to talk about, because you've been very clear about women. But let's start with the issues first. What are the issues that make you say, this has to be addressed, this has to be addressed?
Oh, wow. There's still so many issues. For me, you could even see it for what's happening with the governor's race, transportation. I live in a transit desert. The Northeast Bronx, where I live specifically in the BronxNet community, our train is in Westchester Square. I live in BronxNet. To get there is terrible. The express bus never runs on time, and we have people struggling to just make it to work, and it's big. I mean, I literally remember this woman when I was knocking on her door. She had to quit her job in the city because she was always struggling to make it on time, and it's just the unreliability is not fair.
Do you think some of that will be addressed with the 4 new Metro North stations? I mean, we're getting, let's see, was it Morris Park, Parkchester, Van Nest, Hunts Point, and I'm forgetting one of them, I'm sorry.
You're forgetting, you said Morris Park?
Don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. But anyway,
Co-op
just
City.
in general. Co-op City, yes,
There you
of
go.
course. How could you forget?
Anytime.
Talk about transportation desert.
And so what I would like to see now, a ferry service. We just got it in Soundview, but we are transit starved where I'm at, and we could easily put one up in Maritime, SUNY Maritime. It's legit.
And so that's a matter
center.
of advocacy and somebody being a community person being aware of it and all that. Nice to have you with us, Ms. Lopez. Talk to me about your motivation for being part of, and you've been involved in this kind of activism, so to speak, for a long time, but being part of New York Progressives. Talk to me about what your individual motivation is.
Sure. So I'm one of the coordinators of Bronx Progressives. And my motivation basically is organizing the community and advocating for the community to be involved in the political process from the grassroots level on up. And I take a collective view when it comes to organizing, because I don't believe it's just about me or any particular person. It's really about empowering the community to take the reins of their local politics so that they can be the main driving force and come together and advocate for the changes that they would like to see in their communities.
If you look at voting turnouts, it's abysmal, to say the least, and I'm frankly fearful of what might happen this week, because these are primaries. The whole borough is not voting. There is obviously a governor's primary and an attorney general primary, but that's not the kind of thing that you say, well, we're voting for mayor now and certainly for president. What will bring people out to vote, and what are the kinds of things you do or can do to help bring people out so they realize, you know what, I got to get out there and, I would say, click the lever. That shows you how old-fashioned. You got to slide the paper in the machine. Okay.
I think it's a realization that politics is directly related to people's lives, and things like air quality, water quality, affordable housing. They're related to politics, because you have communities in the South Bronx that live near highways that, are breathing polluted air and have the highest asthma rates in the entire country. And that's a result of, zoning and, which at the end of the day is connected to politics. Mm-hmm. So it's really important for people to understand that their daily lives and the way that plays out, the invisible hand that guides it is things like politics, the development process, zoning. So it's really important for people to be involved and be educated about those processes so that they can, again, be the driving force that advocates for the changes that they would want to see in their communities.
I was going to weigh in as if you had asked me the question, because my thing and our thing, certainly at BronxNet Television, is voter literacy. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the word education. There is such a void. I mean, this is partly why we're doing this tonight and why we do it all the time on BronxNet. But there is such a void of information. You could go like this, and you run out of newspapers to fill all the fingers in your hand that are in the Bronx, and that's a really, really big problem. What do you hear from constituents and people in the Bronx that you talk to about their attitude toward politics, toward elected officials, et cetera?
Sure, there's a lot of apathy.
You're getting the same question in a second, don't you? Go.
There's a lot of apathy, a lot of cynicism, lack of trust in the process itself. And I can share something very quickly that Bronx Progressives organized a successful forum last Wednesday.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Where we invited one of our members, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and we invited several insurgent candidates that are running now for statewide offices. And it was really innovative because I have a background in urban planning and community development. So we decided collectively to come up with different breakout sessions for the people that were there so that we can hear from them as to what they envision local politics to be or should be, and grassroots politics, how we can build a grassroots movement together in the Bronx, and what are the barriers that are standing in the way of that.
Are people really engaged?
People were very engaged, and the candidates participated in these breakout sessions alongside with the community. And then people collectively talked about what the challenges were, what the barriers were, and then one person reported back to the larger group along with the candidates who participated in this exercise. And one of the things that came up consistently was apathy, cynicism, and a lack of trust, and a lack of grassroots infrastructure.
Well, that's why we're doing
the
show today, tonight.
So it's really important to talk about things like county committee and educating people about the structure of the political party so that they can get involved, not just from the top down, from the very bottom up.
This really relates to what Ms. Velasquez said, talking about people understanding the process. What is it like to run for office? What does it take to get a candidate? So I'm going to follow up with that. The question to you is the same. What do you hear from people about being engaged or not engaged in the process? Do they say similar to what you just heard?
I think it's also a frustration.
Frustration.
It's a frustration of bureaucracy, right? Because they tend to mix government with politics, and it's also not that clear to folks, right? So it's clarifying to folks how you can get involved in the governmental process and in the political process, right? Getting involved in community boards, you have to apply. And so certain people go, but I didn't get in the first time. And then I remind them, look, I got in on my fourth try. So Fourth try. So you know what? You keep on going because you need to persist and letting people know. So I was fortunate enough to talk to a team of women earlier this year through Ignite. And through that group, it was advocacy on what can you do? How can you get involved on the government side? Because there are people, like you were saying, who are apathetic and they're like, oh, politics is not for me. Okay, that's fine. Look, I'll respect that, right? You give it to that person and you introduce them to the world of government. And the simple step of, this is your community board. Okay, you didn't apply, fine, go to one meeting. If you like it, keep on going to more meetings. Go to the general meeting first where it talks about everything. And if you want to be more specific, go to another meeting where it's a committee meeting where it's like, okay, they are giving out liquor licenses. You don't like that establishment? Why? Well, express it to the establishment. Make sure that you give them the power of their voice because they need to understand that they do have it. You just have to connect them. And that's part of what this whole role is. It's connecting the dots for folks.
And it won't happen, of course, if you're sitting in your living room and you're just watching TV and clicking around because you really do got to You got to
get out. You got to get out. There's so much to
arguing
lose
with
if you don't.
strangers on Facebook.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
which we all
or Twitter,
do.
like Twitter wars and
Right.
Facebook wars don't work.
So now, Ms. Lopez, I'm going to start with you. Ms. Lopez mentioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she has changed the dialogue not only here in the Bronx, but really all over America about a couple of things. One is that kind of showing, well, it is possible, in fact, to beat a well-entrenched incumbent. So that raises a level of hope. And then actually, I'm going to add a third thing. And the second thing, of course, is that this is an Hispanic woman who did it, and it wasn't kind of out of traditional politics. That's number two. And then number three is this notion of, people use the word, I hate to use it, but socialism, and I'll explain why in a moment. And so there were three elements that she had going for her that I think have filtered into people's minds, especially Hispanic women. Talk to me, we'll start with you and you're going to get the next one, about the significance of what she has accomplished so far and how it may have helped or even hurt some of the efforts to get real change.
That's a very loaded question, Gary.
Not my job, that's my job.
It is. I mean, look.
We'll start with how she's helped and what she's meant to people.
You're telling me, like, the race I ran last year.
Right.
I am a Hispanic woman, right?
Right.
I ran
Yeah.
against an incumbent.
Yeah, although but she was successful in
She
doing
was
it. That
successful,
changed it.
but you're talking about someone who spent the most money in the history of city council races. The one who
You're
had
talking about
Mark Jonah.
Mark Jonah, yes,
Yeah,
of
you know,
course.
it was a little different in that aspect and all the support. And you know, I was taken seriously from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely.
And
We did
yes,
a
yeah,
debate
you
here,
said-
took this seriously.
Yeah, I know you did.
But again,
and I
back
think
to
those are
Ms.
some of the
Ocasio-Cortez, she has become a national figure as a result of this.
Sure.
What has that meant?
to the district overall.
To
for
the
you?
Bronx, to the political movement, to grassroots people?
Well, look, I think it echoed stuff that my race and Amanda Farias's race showed. It's that there's a need for fresh faces. There is a need to see more women of color in office. It definitely echoes that sentiment across the nation, right? Where there are so many things that people are just stymied. I think that, you know, the Donald Trump winning the presidential changed the course of a lot of people are saying, now this is not my time to sit back anymore, but it's my time to go ahead and make a change and make a difference. And I think that that really has, you know, it definitely helped, you know, me to just get out and say, you know what, yeah, let me go out and try this, you know? And certainly for Amanda, it's kind of the same thing. And for me, you know, it's keeping that momentum going. Whether you're successful or not should not stop you from activating, from organizing, from getting people to understand that, look, you matter and your voice matters, but you know what? I need you to come out. I need you to go ahead and apply to your community boards. I need you to apply for county committee. I need you to go to the Bronx County office and say, I am a Dem. How can I help? I want to be more
How
of
can I
a
be part of it?
And a lot of people have been doing that, and I'm grateful for that.
And your thought about the impact that she has had?
Well, I cannot be more thrilled that, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won her election. Like you're saying, she's now a national spokesperson for the progressive movement throughout the country. And I think one of the, you know, main things that she was able to shatter is this concept about viability, right? You know, a lot of people in the establishment look at viability as the ability to fundraise a lot of money and have, you know, key connections that will, you know, get you from point A to point B. But what she was able to demonstrate in her race is that what makes you viable is your message and how that resonates with the community and the working class and immigrants and, you know, people who are clamoring for more affordable housing and people that, you know, are starting to see the connection between politics and, you know, their daily life. And I think that she was able to capture that moment and speak to people who hadn't been spoken to in a very long time. And she was told over and over again and time again that she wasn't viable, that she, you know, was not taken,
gonna work,
and it was never going to work,
win,
and that she wasn't taken seriously, you know, from the start. But she was able to demonstrate that through her message and on the ground organizing game that she had, and connecting with everyday people, she was able to connect and win the race.
Has her political stance made her more of a target and made it easier for some throughout America to dismiss progressive movements because they say, well, it's just socialism, you know, they're coming after us, they're changing America, et cetera, et cetera. This is not going to be democracy. They compare the United States to Venezuela. Has that also been a negative to galvanize support on, frankly, the far right side?
Well, frankly, I, you know, see her particular movement, which is not just her movement, it's a movement that's happening all across the country from before Bernie Sanders ran his race till, you know, after he ran his race. You're seeing national conversations happening around the importance of grassroots and people getting involved that have been historically shut out of the establishment and the political process. So there's a new energy out there that is trickling down to the state and local levels and in places like the Bronx. So I don't necessarily see that as a handicap because at the end of the day, what matters is the message. If your message is able to connect with people and you know, you can inspire people to get up and vote and participate and be a part of this conversation, I think that's what we should be talking about.
I want to extend the conversation, Ms. Velasquez, because you were up against the Bronx County organization. So I interviewed, and he was sitting right in that chair, I interviewed Marcos Crespo, and I brought up a very similar question that I brought up and about the idea of socialism. And he said, which I believe to be totally correct, that many of the things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stands for are the same things we do. We want universal health care. We certainly want to preserve the environment. We want affordable housing. I mean, all these other things. He said they call it socialism. We don't call it that. So I guess what I'm getting at is the nature of the label, and do Democrats, including those who are part of an establishment, have more in common than less in common, and that there are people who are trying to disenfranchise her as being an outlier, whereas really what she's advocating for in many ways is what really all Democrats are looking for. Your thoughts?
Well, as a Democrat, I am proud of the positions that we've taken with advancing healthcare. As you can see, as you read my story, I went through a series of various injuries and the recovery. And look, I can tell you that we need to do better. And certainly having that conversation, pushing that agenda and letting folks know that, you do have a say, and getting people involved should not have a label like, oh, you need to be a socialist to only believe in that. What? As a Democratic Party, we have been on top of that.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I'm sorry. That's my editorial comment. I think that's a really good statement. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Gary. I like that. Hopefully that'll be edited out. Letting the Bronx out. I'm sorry. No, but when it comes down to it, look, I am a proud Democrat, and I am proud of how our party keeps on getting better and better. And you know what? If she's new and she's adding these new ideas and she's labeling it the way she is, that's on her. But we've been doing this for quite some time, and you know what? We're keeping up with it, and it's pushing it and pushing the far right to understand that at the end of the day, we need to look at people's lives and making it better. That means making sure people are healthy, giving them the time off that they need to stay at home and actually get better, giving them the time needed to also be in their office and share and have family time. Because you know what, it's not just about the person, it's their family and how we improve everyone's lives. It's also, hey, they can actually make it at work on time. How about that? Improving our infrastructure.
You started out with, I thought, a very important and fascinating work ethic. And you said, you know what, then if you believe in these things or you want to make change, then just keep working at it. Do you think that the structure of Bronx politics needs to be changed? In other words, clearly there is one organization that is, so to speak, all-powerful, that it needs to kind of change its ways so that more people feel included? Or what you said at the outset, if you want to work for it, you can still get there and get through it. I'm curious what your attitude, and you'll get the same question.
I mean, look at me.
I think working through the process.
You have to be involved, you keep on persisting, you show up. I think that's the message that I want people to understand. Show up. Show up to the voting booth.
I was going to say, start there on Thursday.
Yes, Thursday the 13th.
Thursday,
guys,
not
and
Tuesday.
If you need a ride, there are multiple.
There's ways of doing it.
There are ways. I mean, I know Bronx County is organizing. I'm organizing. We just need people to make it there and understand that there are ways to get there, and there's always people there. But yes.
And same question for you then. Do you think that the political structures in the Bronx really don't allow for this, or do you support what she's saying? You know what? Just keep working, because you'll work through the system and you'll change the system from.
No, I absolutely agree with what Marjorie is saying, but my personal opinion is that there are changes that need to happen. That we need to get people more involved in the political process, and that we need to democratize information so that people can understand the structure, what I was trying to say earlier before, about how county committee works and how that's a grassroots level position within the respective party that you belong to, that if you get involved and you get enough people involved to be a part of it with you, you could transform the Bronx Democratic Party and beyond. And there are many grassroots organizations that are doing that throughout New York City in terms of recruiting people that are already active, showing up in the community, speaking truth to power on the issues that matter. We need to recruit those kinds of people to be on county committee, because effectively, what can end up happening is really building a movement. So I feel, that's what Bronx Progressives.
And that's really with numbers.
With numbers, because at the end of the day, you may not have millions of dollars, to run a campaign or to, introduce, services. But, what other candidates in the country have been able to demonstrate, and Ocasio-Cortez specifically, is that you may not have their money, but if you organize and you galvanize the community and you let the community drive that conversation, you will have the people. And if you have the people, you can win.
Many people, certainly people who think like-minded to the people in this room, are kind of upset about Trumpism and kind of upset about what's going. Kind of is probably too light a word to use, but they're pretty upset. Do you think that, in a long-run sort of way, there will be this reaction, and now we're seeing women candidates all over the country, not only here in the Bronx, not only the two women sitting at the table, but women saying, you know what, these guys haven't done it all these years, we're going to take control. Do you think that is a long-term benefit, a long-term bit of progress that we're all going to get out of what's been going on in Washington?
Sure, I feel
in other words, that there really
Absolutely,
is a large reaction?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fact that Trump won, I feel like Trump has been one of the best things that could have happened to grassroots organizing. I think that if Trump hadn't won, I don't think that we would be organizing in the way that we've been organizing. And it's great to see the sense of hope, the sense of optimism that people have to take back their politics.
Then you get the last question, and the last question is really a very easy one. Give us the statement to people of the Bronx, especially in the 34th Senatorial District, the 84th and 87th Assembly Districts, why they should come out on Thursday.
It's important. I mean, it is definitely important to have your voices heard. I mean, you want your candidate to win, you believe in the candidate, then you show up. You show up because everything depends on it. You know what? You're stuck in traffic? Yeah. Think about your candidate. You are stuck in the hospital not being tended in the time that you want. Think about your candidate. It affects everything of your life. So your life literally depends on it.
Get out and vote. Marjorie
Yes.
Velasquez, thank you for your passion.
Anytime.
Samelys Lopez, thank you for your passion.
Muchas gracias por la invitación.
There you go. And folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show, anything going on in the Bronx, and I'm sure everybody has something to say about it, then send us an email at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org. You can send us a tweet at BronxTalk or post them on our Facebook page. We'll read them on the air during a future edition of the program. Also, you can check out our archives at BronxNet.org. You find BronxTalk by following the watch menu on the new BronxNet website. On primary night, BronxNet will present a live program beginning at 9 p.m. featuring results and analysis of primary day. I will be there to host and anchor that for you. Thanks to our producer, who's Helen Greenberg. Our director is Nicholas Marrero. To the cast of thousands, and to them and to you, good night. And listen, go out and vote on Thursday, please.
Yes, please.